Okay, so, and like I said, there's another mic. Ron Wayne is in the house. He's gonna come in a few minutes. I think the main event here today is, well, okay, so the main event, okay, you tell the story. Paul Terrel gave Apple its first purchase order in 1976. And I'll just say another couple words. So Paul lives in Portland, and he's in his 90s now, but doing pretty well. And
83 years old.
oh,
Let's be around for another 10.
Ron Wayne is in his 90s. Anyway, and Paul had the 50th birthday party for the Byte Shop in December, which, look, and Ron Wayne's here. So anyway, welcome, Ron.
My apologies, folks. Delay.
So
That's what 90 looks like. You know, I would like to say something. You know, the reason this event is actually happening, what we're doing up here on the stage, is in April 1st. You know, Apple became 50. They did the partnership agreement April 1st, 50 years ago, sort of thing. The Byte Shop was 50 in December, and so forth. And I called Woz up on the phone, or I emailed him. Okay, Woz is very hard to get on the phone, by the way, but he will definitely respond to my emails. And I said, Woz, I've got this great idea about history repeating itself. Okay, and I said, I want to have an event where we can reinvent what happened 50 years ago, and I want to do 50 Apple1 replica computers, and in the spirit of Steve Wozniak. You know, Woz was always about things should be smaller and smaller and smaller, and the Apple1 replica, if you look at that board, there's about 70 components on there. The Byte Shop Apple1 replica's got about 7 on them. So I said, Woz, we're taking your concepts forward here and so forth. And even today now they've got AI and CPT and all of that. So we think we created a product which going forward, you know, and how's computer science going to be taught in the future? But with that product, it actually does machine language computer programming with the WozMon. And we have the Apple Basic, the integer basic that he did on that board, and there's your basic, and then with a Wi-Fi attachment, you've got AI. So everything that's going on with computers can be done there, and I said, I've got to bring it out at Woz's famous $666.66. So we have 50 of them here at the show. If you want to buy one for $666, I said, Bobby Eaton at R&R Auction would be happy to auction those off in a year at $10,000, so it might be a nice little investment for you. At any rate, that's the pitch on the computer product. But once again, part of the history was that I always thought I got the first 50 Apple Ones. As it turns out, I found out that Woz got the first Apple computer off the run, and he decided that he wanted to give Liza Loop a computer for their school, and so he went to Steve and said, Steve, I need one of those computers to give to Liza. And Steve Jobs, in his way, said, no, I'm not going to give you one, you're going to have to buy one for $300. And so Woz bought one for $300. Liza got serial number 1 delivered to her by Woz, and Paul Terrel's Byte Shop's got number 2 through 51. And then who only knows where the 175 of them ended up. But at any rate, what we wanted to do is replicate that history repeating itself here today on stage. Woz has generously contributed his time to come here. Liza, just got to meet Liza for the first time. For 50 years, we've known of each other, but we've never met. It's been wonderful. She's got some great stories to tell and so forth. We actually all do. And at the end of the presentation here, we're going to have a Q&A. So any questions you might have or whatever, we'd be happy to answer them. So at that point,
I would like to expound on the Liza story. Well,
Go ahead.
at our Humber Computer Club, about this many people, I think Liza came, as I recall, Liza came and spoke to us. And she was taking computers, rolling them in, elementary schools, teaching kids on, and found out she was up in Kottke, California. So got Steve Jobs to drive up to Kottke, California. And she had like an old granted PDP computer, and she would take it to the kids, but she worried about what their concept of what a computer was, not how to use it. How to use it is part of it. Sit down and play this game. But it's set up with a lot of instructions people wrote to act a certain way. It's not like intelligence of its own. Concepts that get into the brain of what a computer really is, and I admired that so much. And for the 2-hour drive back home, 2 or 3 hour, I told Steve, we should give Liza the first Apple I. We should, please, let's do it. But he wouldn't go for that. So he said I could buy it for $300. And
Discount.
I got a discount.
You want your $300 back, no?
I just, what?
You want your $300 back?
Never in my life. No, I'm very proud. It's just, you know how you are. You do the right things. You don't really worry about the total money costs and all.
I think at that time, we had one of the first Mitz Altaires in our office. We started out in the second floor business office. We started the Sonoma County Computer Club at the end of 1974. I think the Sonoma County Computer Club predated the Homebrew Computer Club.
Did it predate the Altair?
Yes. We had a teletype hooked over Telnet with acoustic couplers at 300 baud from Call Computer in Mountain View. We had a hookup to the, I think it was a Decision 2000 HP system at Lawrence Hall of Science. So I didn't know anything about computers. I'm an educator and a philosopher and a social theorist. But I came from a family that was particularly interested in science and the future. My father was part of the SETI project early on. So I'm just doing what I was trained to do, to be an educator and to be looking into the future. I could tell lots of stories, but I really want to ask Steve a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, that's the sort of thing that the first computer should go to. First Apple I.
Well, the first Apple I is still the property of my nonprofit corporation, Loop Center Inc., or Learning Options Center. It's just a pun on my last name. It has its own name. Yeah. So when Steve gave it to me, I was just amazed. On the other hand, I had no idea what to do with it. Because it was just a naked motherboard. And I said, you know, well, thank you very much. This is delightful. What do I do with it? And he said, oh, well, you get somebody to build a case, and you go down to Zach's and you buy a Cherry Pro keyboard, and you get somebody else to build a power supply for it. And by the way, we didn't know you had to have a switching power supply, so they built it.
You didn't have to.
Well, it ran sort of. Anyway, I took it around. The first place I took it to was a math class in Winston Junior High School. By the way, I didn't have my own school. If I had a class with students, I would have them hanging off the rafters. It's good that I'm not a classroom teacher. But I'm really interested in the future of learning writ large, and education and schools as one of the tools that we use for learning. But what I want to know from you is, what would you like to see happen with the Apple I in the future? I'm actually a kid compared to these two guys. I'm only 81. And I'm not going to be around to protect this machine anymore. So, Waz, have you got any ideas?
Well, I don't know. There are people that, obviously you can sell an Apple I for infinite now, but there's a lot of people just want to go back and learn. Where did technology come from, step by step? You can learn. One person can actually learn from those early stages, just of any of the computers, the Altair, the early processors, how they work, and you know, how you set up something you can program and run programs on. So education-wise, still early computers have some retro value now.
Well, but we have to actually take care of this physical object. And that's my concern. Is what do we do with that? I know what I'd like to see do with it, but since you're the originator, I want to know what you think its future should be of the physical object of the Apple I #1.
Well, the best thing of all is if it gets to a museum where people will be able to see it, share it, learn about it, and understand it forever.
Have a museum in mind?
There are quite a few technical museums nowadays that would love it.
I did ask the Smithsonian if they wanted it about 25 years ago. They said, oh yeah, if you donate it to us, we'll take it. But no, we won't take it. You can't keep ownership of it, and we won't promise that we'll do anything specific with it. So I am holding out to make sure that the future of this physical item is that it go on tour around the world and everybody gets a chance to see it and experience visually this artifact. And that all these wonderful replicas that are being made, everybody should have a chance to do what you're saying, of learn to program it and experience what it was like when we didn't have all these user-friendly apps. And sometimes
I always liked being the first to do things in my life because I was too shy to compete and do the same things as others. So you've got a #1. So that's the first.
Yeah, and we all need to curate the #1. And as long as I'm holding this microphone, Dan, stop me. Let me say one more thing, which is that I have a collection of all kinds of other stuff as well. And it is sitting in a high fire danger building in Sonoma County right now. I need help. I can't lift a box anymore. I need physical help preserving this collection. So any of you who don't have enough to do, come and see me later.
Hey,
Thank you,
Liza, your computer, when it goes around the world on this tour, I think I saw a guy over there by the door by the name of Mark, and I think he was volunteering to make that computer have a home here at the Computer Museum. So there's a home.
Okay, but we have to guarantee to share it because it's not mine or yours anymore or the Computer History Museum's. It belongs to the world. We've got better things to do than target some poor soldier in the desert with these things.
Well, the topic of education, it really motivates me. I don't know, I'm thinking about the word ontology. The good thing about language models is that you can teach it whatever you want. And it doesn't know things. Ontology, an ontology of knowledge would be knowing things. Anyway.
I look at it as the most important things ever are the ones you feel, that you have emotions about. And, and it might be just a pet that's injured or somewhere, and you could cry. And sometimes the elements don't cry, exactly.
They pretend to cry. They simulate human emotions, but they don't have them.
In the end, it might just prove that human brains really aren't that much anyway. They're just a set of logic gates.
Well, it's been, I gave the demo of the Apple One as a terminal into GPT. I did that a year ago. I'm doing that demo for the past year. And it's really been helpful to see how limiting GPT is. It's astounding. You can ask the same question 10 times and you won't get the same answer. Which means, I don't understand how people can do vibe coding.
You can't have one answer because there's not one type of person. But I think let's digress. Let's go back to where the Apple One came from. Okay, I've been doing incredible projects and computer projects all my life, designing the hottest products of the day at Hewlett-Packard, and this club started. And oh my gosh, I had built a little machine that I could type on a keyboard, so expensive. My TV could display it. I could talk to computers on the ARPANET. The ARPANET, today's internet. It was 6 university computers. MIT, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, Stanford, Research. And I could talk to them with this little machine. So I thought, I'm going to go to this new club and I'll probably be a hero showing it off. And I went there and everybody was interested in these little things called computers, which is another name for processor, elaborated processors. I said, oh my God, those are like the ones I used to design all through high school. You could never afford a part to build one. And when I went down to the club, and the first night I said, instead of talking over the phone line to a faraway computer like Liza did, why don't I just put the computer here? Microprocessors, the brains. Looked at the data, early microprocessors weren't good enough to build a real computer. I told my dad, I'm gonna have a 4K computer someday that can run programs. And he said it costs as much as a house. I sat there for about 2 seconds. I said, I'll live in an apartment. It was an internal goal, and I was too shy to ever talk to anybody about that. But you form these internal goals when you're very, very shy. And so then I saw, first night at the computer club, the whole formula to a personal computer that wasn't just a processor with some switches for ones and zeros and lights for ones and zeros. I built that machine 5 years before. It was called the cream soda computer. I got the parts given to me. And I was a little more into humanistic products like the Hewlett-Packard scientific calculators. You press 5 and a 5 appears, human. So I was also a really good typist. So the idea of you have a keyboard and a video display, I take it down to the homebrew computer club, show it off. And then I said, oh my gosh, Bill Gates wrote a BASIC. I gotta write a BASIC for my processor and show off bits of the BASIC week after week after week. I passed out all my designs for free. I didn't do it for money. I didn't do it for a company. I didn't do it to start an industry. No, I wanted other engineers, even shy engineers, to look at my designs and say, wow, look what he did. How impressive. I want to impress engineers. I've gotten that recognition now. And I gave away the designs, and other people in the club built their own version of it. And then some people I helped build their own. And then Steve Jobs came into town. He'd come into town about once a year, and he had zero money, so he's always looking for a way to make money. And he said, we should start a company. That somehow you need a formalization, a company that grows big, that has lots of money coming in, and that's how you could be somebody important in the world. But I would never leave Hewlett-Packard. I would be an engineer for life at Hewlett-Packard. I would never go up the org chart because I didn't want to be political. I had ruled politics out of my life. I would never vote. And so I had to get it okay at Hewlett-Packard. I can still keep my job at Hewlett-Packard and do Apple on the side. So this was the Apple One computer was had a very humble start, but I didn't leave my job. Thank you. But anyway, then Steve Jobs came early on, and he said we should make a PC board of it, so it can make more than one of them at low cost. And that's what he had done with my Blue Box back in college. He made a little PC board so you can make more of them faster. And he said he's got this guy at Atari that is sort of an older gentleman that knows more about companies, and we could could set up the company the way we did. I forget what 45% in Ron Wayne had 10%. You'll hear from him in a second. And I thought, oh, good, an elderly person that we can trust and all that. And he referred me to a lot of books. And one of them was None Dare Call It Treason. And it was always libertarian stuff. And so I said, that's interesting. Well, I was so young and naive. I didn't know any of this stuff or anything towards politics or anything. I thought that's, okay, some of it makes sense, especially today. Golden property. Might as well, might be better than $1 that people can just change the amount of, be more like Bitcoin. So Ron Wayne, I went to his apartment one night. I pretty much didn't know him. Steve Jobs, everything went through Steve Jobs. So he had the experiences with Ron and went to his apartment and we talked about this computer and how we would set up our partnership, and I'll let him talk from now on. You what?
I am supposed to equate what you just said.
Well, you could talk a little bit more about what you remember going on.
No, what I remember going on was
Hold your mic up, Ron. Hold your mic up.
Steve Jobs came to me and said he and you were going to form a company and that he was having a little difficulty with you. You didn't understand the concept of proprietorship. You were very parental about your circuits. And
Not exactly the circuit. What I was thinking was, okay, you want to divide a crystal down to get the right speed for horizontal on a television and verticals on the television. And maybe you want to count 200 numbers. So you'll start out with 1, you'll count up to 200, and then equate it with logic things. Did I reach 200? And when you reach 200, start the counter over. No, I would do things like start the counter at 200 and count down, and when you hit 0, the processor put out a little signal that said reload whatever's on its inputs, 200. And little tricks like that you come up with, and you can't be restricted from using those, future on, but we take it to some agreement.
But once we had a conversation, and I believe I had persuaded you of the importance of your designs being for the property of the new company. And once that happened, I remember distinctly, Jobs jumped up just instantly and said, "That's it, we're going to form a company. You would have 45%, I would have, Jobs would have 45%, and knocked me off my pins." And he says, "And Mr. Wayne will have 10% to act as tiebreaker in case you two have any disputes." So, okay, that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I was quite honored and astonished at the same time. At any rate, I, if you recall, marched off to my office, sat down and typed up the 3-page founding contract for the Apple Empire.
I was impressed that you sat down in your apartment just to type out a legal document. I was just so amazed. Oh, some people can.
Yes, he was. I couldn't believe that he couldn't believe that someone could sit down who wasn't an attorney and draw up a 3-page partnership agreement looking for covering all the points and issues and concerns and events and so on. And I had, of course, by that time, had 20 years in the game and had quite a bit of experience in all aspects. I was also a polymath. I was a designer, draftsman, illustrator, machinist, book, you name it. I got that through job shopping at different enterprises, doing all sorts of different things. And various times along the way, it came to me to write up contracts. And I copied off my first one and remembered enough of it to be able to draw up a second one, and so on down the line until when we got to the Apple situation, and I was able to astonish Mr. Wozniak and type up the Apple, found the Apple contract.
Mike Markkula for really creating this whole industry. He came in, told us how to set up a company. He was willing to invest the money and build 1,000 computers, told us how professional we had to look and things we had to do, what sort of people we had to hire for what roles and what their responsibilities were. And Steve and I would sit down and interview a little bit. And Mike really established Apple for the first years. And he knew what to do business. He'd been in business at Intel and got out on a stock option. He made $1.5 million back when it was a huge amount more worth. And so he was just looking around for something to do with electronics. So Mike Markkula, yeah, not to be forgotten.
It was Don Valentine who sent Mike Markkula.
Yes, it is.
How did Don Valentine hear about his kids in the garage? I never knew.
Don Valentine, I don't know. Steve, you'd have to ask Steve Jobs. Took him out of somewhere. Probably he had relationships with Atari. Something. Maybe. Anyway, yeah, Don Valentine. I have a lot of good memories. A lot of the people were on the Apple early boards, real famous people. But I'm just subtle. I just didn't want to ever be in the press. Put me in a little room down at the end of the hall, all on my own, to sit there and design hardware and software.
How often did you visit Atari in the early days?
Atari, it was really funny. They tried to hire me. Nolan Bushnell tried to hire me, but I would never leave my job at Hewlett-Packard. I would be a Hewlett-Packard engineer for life. That was the problem, starting with leaving to do Apple with the Apple II. At first I said no to the big money with Mike Markkula. But what was the question? Your area.
I was just asking about Atari.
Well, Steve came to me one day. Okay, well, he came in town one day and I showed him this long game I built. 28 little $1 chips, and 2 of them spelled a 4-letter word when you missed the ball. And Steve ran down to Atari to show it to them. And he couldn't sell me. I would never leave Hewlett-Packard, but they hired him. He was interesting. He was real gung-ho. He had super high energy for business. And they hired him, and he came to me quite a long time later, after some months, and he said, well, Atari, Nolan Bushnell wants this one-player Pong game. And he sort of described it to me, and has this corner and a pink, the ball has to hit a bunch of bricks, and eventually it breaks through. And he said, could you design that? Oh, I would love to. For me to design a game that kids are going to play. Kids were a part of my life too, them having fun. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that. He said, there's a hitch. You have to do it in 4 days. Looking back, I never got an answer. I never asked. I don't ask people personal questions. But maybe Steve needed the money to get into this, I don't know, orchard up in Oregon, commune or something. That's my hunch. He could have told me he needed all the money. And I would have said, yeah, you take it all. Because, I have a job, and that's the sort of person I was, but he didn't trust me, so he told me we were paid $700 for it. I didn't think I could do it in 4 days and nights, but we did. And he wrote me a check for half of $700. And it was much, much later in time, the week the Mac came out, I read in a book that he'd been paid thousands. And I thought, I cried. No, I cried tears. I don't care. I would have given it all to him. But, best friends just don't lie to each other, kind of. You can have it all. But anyway, that was, the Apple II was our big product, but, when we started, we just thought, oh my gosh, that was so great, we're gonna be a $1 million company. To me, that was like, oh my God, that's the whole world. Mike Markkula said, in 5 years we'll be $500 million. I guess if he's had success, he can talk that way. I always try to follow what he said we should be and do.
Do you want to talk about, Steve, the Apple I, Apple II transition? Do you remember the phone call with us when I complained bitterly because the Apple I crashed all the time, and I said I can't use it in a class because it won't run for 40 minutes. It crashes because it heats up.
Well, it's bad engineering.
Yeah.
I didn't.
But you said to me, oh, don't worry, I have something else for you. And then that was the Apple II. And you sent me, I think somebody brought the Apple II to me. It's Apple II number 10, which is part of the collection. And I called you up and asked you if you wanted the Apple I back. because you had substituted the Apple II for it. And I said, well, what do I do with this? And he said, well, unscrew the Apple I out of the case that you have that it's running in, and just drop the Apple II board in, and you'll still have your machine you can take into classrooms. And I said, you want the Apple I back? And he said, no, keep it. Thank you.
I don't remember that exactly, but it's the sort of thing I would do.
This is the kind of businessman we have right here. And if we didn't have him, we wouldn't have a computer revolution.
What just occurred to me recently is you had brought the Apple II in a shoebox over to Steve Jobs' house in August of '76. He gave us a demo of color bars. That was so impressive. And I'm thinking, actually, but in the summer of '76, you were still finishing BASIC. So you were designing the Apple II while you were finishing BASIC.
We went out to a show in Atlantic City called PC 76. Personal computers that everybody else is doing the Intel microprocessor and the S100 bus and all talking about. And we had this one that was a little different because the whole computer came with a keyboard video display. Every computer from then on was going to have a keyboard video display, but we met all these little two-person people in this show trying to show off their way to take a microprocessor and put some switches and lights on for ones and zeros. And Dan and Steve and I were there. I think we were the three that were Apple, but I usually went up to the room. I'm shy. Don't let me be there showing computers off to people. I'd go up to the room and I'd add a new command to the BASIC. Burn some new ROM. Steve would take it down and have a new command he could show to the people there at that show.
My memory is I was the only person at the booth most of the time because you and Steve were out scoping out the competitors at the show.
But they're a rare thing. Well, we were showing off the Apple I, actually, and we had an Apple II prototype hand-wired by myself. We weren't showing people. But we went down, there was a guy with a video projector, and video projectors were so new then, you almost never saw one. We went down when everyone was gone at night, took my Apple II, and had the guy hook it up. I just wanted to make sure that it worked on a video projector, and it did. And the guy said, of all these other computers you see in here, maybe 10 or 20 different people trying to introduce things, he said, this is the one I get.
Wow.
It was the only color and all that stuff that we're so familiar now.
Was the Sol processor technology at that show? No, I don't think so. But Paul
Oh
Terrel.
yeah, it was.
Oh.
We were his first idea was, we'll make PC boards for $20 and pass out our designs and people plug in their own chips. We'll make these PC boards for $20, sell them for $40. And then Paul wanted them kind of completely built, and Steve sort of said, well, kind of partly built. You get a board, you got to plug a power supply, monitor, and a keyboard. And we can get you onto those in a wooden case. And so we got that order, but Steve got the place that made our PC boards had a ton of people there that would plug in the chips to actually be like a fully built computer board. It wasn't $20, it cost us more like $250. And to rebuild our whole computer up, so we didn't have to sell you a kit of parts and tell you how to do it, only cost $13. $13 from that company in Santa Clara to fully build it. So we bring those boards to the garage. I originally, but later on Dan, so you could test them, find the bad parts that went in wrong, and fix them. Then we put them in these little white boxes and take them down to Paul at his shop to get paid cash on delivery. We had 30 days credit, cash on delivery.
And they show up with these pizza boxes, and that's my fully assembled and tested computer. What is going on here? And if you saw the Jobs movie there, they show Steve saying to me, my dad's name is Paul. Paul, we're like family, right? And by the way, you've got all of these components here and kits and so forth, and all you need to make this computer run is a couple of triad transformers and a keyboard, and guess what? That's more sales for you. So you're going to make more money by completing the kit, and of course Chaz had wooden cases and so forth, and so you have the opportunity to add to the sale and make more money.
The other computers, they called themselves computers we were selling, they were inexpensive, but they weren't useful until you plugged in a ton of cost in memory and other things. So we had the low-cost, useful.
You know, the other interesting thing when Woz was developing, it was right on the heels of me getting those Apple ones, and all of a sudden Woz is showing up in my store because in the store we actually had color monitors in there, and color monitors in those days were literally $1,000 or something. He would come down with this computer and go in my demo room, and he's back there, you know, playing around with something. Woz, what is that? You know. And so I was getting a kind of a prelude to seeing this. We all heard the Osborne story last night in the movie about pre-announcing that, you know, your next computer and what a disaster it was for Adam and his situation. But those guys did such a wonderful job in transitioning. I mean, they had 200 products there, you know, Apple ones that were going to get outdated by Apple II, and they were offering, bring them back and we'll give you a credit and we'll put you into the new computer and so forth. And obviously, that turned out to be very good for everybody that was involved with it. So it's interesting how history goes.
Yeah, and later on it was great how Steve Jobs would introduce iPods and iPhones, and it would be available that day. Not so anymore, but I thought that was so admirable.
And that's where the secrecy came in, right? I don't know.
Yes, I didn't know
In my memory, the whole siloed thing and the secrecy thing didn't start until Steve came back to Apple, and he had learned the value of a surprise launch with product available right away.
Well, I like how my wife says it, that you let out information. There's a whole bunch of people you're working with that don't, that adhere to the keeping it secret.
Not good.
So what's the...
Put up the Apple II computer long after Apple I, and it was a year before Physical came out, and that was the killer app. But up till then, what were the apps? They were color games, and I took the Apple II, before we ever delivered an Apple I to you, I took the Apple II to the Homebrew Computer Club, and I had written in basic language, simple little program for Breakout, the game Breakout, in color. And I put in a command, if you hit Control-Z, it would jiggle the paddle like you couldn't tell if you were really doing it or not, but it would never miss. It would play the whole game as though you won. And I sat down, Captain Crunch, John Draper, playing it, and he played the whole game, and he wasn't used to these turn-the-dial games, arcade games, and he won. He didn't know it was playing by itself.
Great
But
stuff.
it would jiggle the paddle so you couldn't tell.
We are running way over time, so I think we need to...
We'd like to thank everyone. We can give a round of applause for our panelists.
Hello, my name is Chaz. Can you hear me? No? My name is Chaz, and this is the Byte Shop case, the first Byte Shop case that Paul Terrel has consigned. And what? We are all sold out. Is that what I heard? Anyway, I'm the designer of the case. I made Apple's first image. I am Apple's first designer. And I have never met, this is a story of the century in my opinion, I've never met Woz. I had a couple opportunities, once in '76 when they were making the Vanless cases, when you and Steve came out of the shop. I had an opportunity to meet you, but he scurried you off. Long story short, we'll have to talk sometime. And then at the Byte Shop anniversary, you escaped me again. But third time's a charm, right? I believe you want to present this to someone special who really is deserving. Apple1.
Apple1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1 don't think so.
The first time Woz did this, I said, well, thank you very much, but what do I do with it?
Yeah,
I'm not a computer person, I'm an educator and a teacher.
but things have value when they don't have an obvious, real, useful purpose.
Well, I still want this to have educational value, learning value, and I'll do my best to make sure that more people around the world get a chance to learn from the work that Steve and all the rest of you have done, because you may be famous for this, but there's a whole bunch of unsung heroes out there who need to get some too.
Thank you for being